The Liquid Culture.
Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 3 of our tea series here at the Liquid Culture. Today we are getting into a tea that is one of my all-time favorites and a little bit more advanced on the tea scale. Probably very few of you have heard of the tea that we're tasting today, and that's probably because it's really quite a unique version of tea and can be certainly a kind of a flavor and a palate that is certainly takes some time to adjust to. So what we're talking about is Pu Erh tea. So Pu Erh tea is a tea that is it goes through a very similar process of green tea. However, once the processing is done, it is packed into cakes and then set to age and ferment for very long periods of time. So what that does is it changes really the entire complexity of the tea. It changes the flavors, it changes the health benefits, it changes all kinds of stuff with the tea by going through that fermentation process. But let's back it up just a little bit. So one of the reasons why Pu Erh tea is one of my personal favorites is because you guys watch my channel because you know that I'm very much into wine and craft beer and spirits, and I really enjoy products and really I would say 95% of the things that I drink and consume are products that have a story, that have a sense of place, that you can really taste a difference in this product versus this product because it came from somewhere else, was grown differently, was manufactured differently. And Pu Erh tea is the kind of tea that can really showcase terroir more than any other tea. Reason being is that it comes again. It comes from the Yunnan province, much like the last tea that we drank. And in Yunnan, you've got very rich, dense, dark soils in the forest that these trees are grown in. And when it comes to Pu Erh tea, if you're getting high quality Pu Erh tea, it's coming from very, very old trees. There is an entire scale of trees ranging from very, very young trees that look very bush-like all the way up to 1,000-year-old plus tea trees with, trunks that are like this thick, big branches sprawling out. And what has happened over time, much like with old grapevines, is these trees have set root systems into the ground that have really maintained this kind of climate that they're in, and they have really sucked up all of this sense of place that the soil and the environment and the climate has to offer for the tree. So this is kind of a bittersweet episode for me because I love Pu Erh tea so much. However, the Pu Erh tea that I have today is really not that great, unfortunately. I had a really nice cake of Pu Erh tea that I accidentally left in Dallas and had to go kind of last minute with a lower quality Pu Erh that I'm not so stoked about, but it gives me an opportunity to show you guys what kind of a lower end Pu Erh looks like and get you stoked up about an episode that I will probably do 100% about Pu Erh tea, go a little bit more in depth with it, with a really nice cake of Pu Erh that I've got coming on the way. So first time I tasted Pu Erh tea was from a restaurant called Fine China in Dallas. If you live in that area or are visiting that area, I would highly recommend checking out Fine China. I think that they do a lot of stuff right there. Some incredible Peking duck, little high price, a little bit high end Chinese dining, but hey, it's called Fine China. What do you expect? But the tea service they do there, they do right. They do it almost very ceremonial style with the tray. They wash the leaves. You really don't get that in a lot of places, and I really enjoyed that. I had Pu Erh there for the first time. I ordered a oolong. They were out of the oolong. She recommended Pu Erh. I had no idea what Pu Erh was. She came out, brewed it up for me, and I was blown away. It was one of those experiences where, like, an aha moment for tea, and in fact, I think that it may have been that moment that I really decided to do a deep dive into tea, much like I have with wine and beer and so on and so forth. So she was very kind, our waitress was very kind. She gave me a chunk of that Pu Erh from the cake that they had there, and I was able to take it back and do some of my own experimentation with it with different infusions and fun stuff like that. A good Pu Erh tea A good Pu Erh tea should definitely show you differences via each infusion. The experience that I had at Fine China, the very first infusion was very light, very fruity, but not overly aromatic. The second infusion, nicely aromatic, very rich, almost like a earthy version of a black tea. The third infusion was like straight up drinking like a Guinness. It was thick, rich. It was very earthy, had very toasty, roasted kind of malty characteristics to it. And it was that experience that really showed me what tea can do, and really got me excited about tea, and in particular Pu Erh tea. So with Pu Erh, really is best to experience it in the way it was intended with multiple infusions. Sometimes I'll use something like this, which is not really intended for multiple infusions, but if I want to brew a batch of Pu Erh where I just, this is a little cast iron tea kettle that you can get very inexpensively, $30, and is really, really nice for single infusion kind of batch brewing of tea. But you stick your Pu Erh or your tea of any kind in this basket, you pour your water over it, fill it up, and as you pour each small cup, you're essentially getting a different almost a different infusion, because the tea that's remaining continues to brew. So that first cup you pour is going to be a lighter brew than the second, more strong, so on and so forth, as you continue to pour each cup out of this teapot. So that's kind of a fun way to do Pu Erh. Today we're just going to do it the way we've been doing it with the last two episodes, with my little tea steeper here in our little glass mug, so you guys can see the color differences. But I am going to do something a little bit different with this one, in that I am going to go with two different infusions so that you guys can kind of see some of the differences, and we can talk about that a little bit. So let me tell you why I'm not stoked about this Pu Erh. You may not be able to see it very well, but essentially you can tell right off the bat. Yeah, I'm gonna try. You can tell right off the bat with this tea, it's very kind of chopped up, and that is really, to me, kind of a sign of low quality. Now, I know that I bought this as a sample, and nobody's gonna send me a sample in cake form, but what I would have expected was for longer leaves, bigger leaves that were busted off of a cake and put into the bag and sent. So that was my first indication that this may not be the highest quality. So like the first two teas that I tasted, I got this from Adagio Tea. Been very, very happy with the other teas that I received from them. This one, however, there was really no explanation on the side as to how old the tree was that the leaves came from, how long it had been aged, when it was harvested, all that good stuff, which is something that I look for when I'm buying Pu Erh. The reason that I don't like to drink tea bags anymore is because this is the kind of tea that you see in tea bags, and it's just a really kind of poor example of loose leaf tea. Even if it's not that real ground up powder that you see in a lot of tea bags, even something like this is just really not the highest quality of tea. You can tell it's been kind of busted up. It's really dark, which trust me, Pu Erh tea definitely gets dark, but this just doesn't, the eye test doesn't do it for me on this one. I'm looking forward to, I have another tea, online tea site that I went with called Jojo Tea. I think the website is sipjojo.com. Actually heard about these guys on a podcast that I listened to about tea and cigars. It was really, really an interesting kind of conversation about these kind of pre-embargo Cubans, these teas that are super, super old, super, super nuanced and flavorful teas, matcha and Pu Erh. So that's where I have a cake coming from that I'm really excited about. Another place that I would highly recommend you guys to check out beyond my puny little channel here is My Leaf. So My Leaf is where I actually have been just diving headfirst into. The guy's name is Don. He does videos, very educational, very informative videos about tea. They also sell tea. I do plan on going and purchasing a cake of Pu Erh from those guys, but that is like high-end level Pu Erh, like $100 cakes for a cake this big of tea. You know, you'll get a lot of good uses out of it, but that is a pretty serious investment for some tea. The other cool thing about Pu Erh, last bit that I'll touch on, then we'll get into the infusions here, is Pu Erh is a tea that if you are getting high quality Pu Erh teas, it does have an effect. Some people are more sensitive to it than others, but it's almost like a tea drunk feeling that you get. The caffeine levels with Pu Erh are incredibly high, but there is something else that you get from that fermentation that is considered almost like a tea drunk. Very tingly sensation, very interesting kind of caffeine high that you can get with Pu Erh. So, user be warned, you might be in store for a little bit more than just your standard caffeine buzz when it comes to drinking Pu Erh. But that is really what the really high quality Pu Erh teas that you can expect that. I don't get it from this one. Guys, on this we're going with a 205 degree temperature. So Pu Erh is one of those teas that is going to be the higher temperature. It is a little bit sturdier, a little more robust and earthy, so you can go with those higher temperatures. The fermentation process works a lot of that tannin out, so you really don't have to be super concerned about extracting too much tannin when it comes to Pu Erh. But we're going with short infusions on this. So I'm gonna go 30 seconds on the first infusion. We're gonna rinse the tea first, just like all the other tea. Definitely wanna give it a good rinse here. Let those aromatics start to open up. So right off the bat, getting into why I'm not super stoked about this tea is the first, like the primary aroma is almost like an old shoe. Now Pu Erh is, again, a very earthy, very robust, rich, mushroomy, leathery, forest floor kind of a tea. But old shoe is usually not the kind of intended aroma. And yeah, old shoe with almost like an old shoe that maybe stepped in some dog poop in the backyard, and then you wiped it off on the mat or something, and then you thought it was clean, but you kicked your shoes off in the kitchen, and every time you walk by it, you get this kind of old foot, kind of dog poop kind of a smell with it. So not the best aroma off the bat. And you can see like this color is already very kind of orangey, copperish, red color. With a good quality Pu Erh, it should not be extracting this much color from just a simple wash like that. It should be a slower color infusion into your water. A lot of the more high quality Pu Erh teas produce a golden liquor, very kind of yellowy, almost egg yolk kind of a color, golden color for Pu Erh. The Pu Erh I had at Fine China was definitely still on the darker end of the spectrum, but like I had mentioned in that story, it infused much slower. This Pu Erh almost immediately tries to turn to black, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So first infusion, 205 degree water, we're gonna go for 30 seconds. So yeah, I mean, I'm getting a very, very strong hint of that. It's almost like a wet wood, manure, old leather foot kind of shoe aroma, which is not very pleasant. All right, so that's 30 seconds. Infusion number 1. It does start to mellow out a little bit after it's been brewed. That really kind of unpleasant aroma starts to mellow out, and it turns more into almost mushroomy, wet leaf kind of thing, which is something that I love in good wines, good earthy wines. So that's the reason I love Pu Erh. This one has a little bit of undertone of those flavor and aromas that I really love with Pu Erh tea, but it's just kind of overshadowed by that kind of unpleasant aroma. So yeah, almost on the nose on the liquor, it's almost more kind of toffee. It's much more restrained, so therefore it's a little bit more less earth, more kind of toffee aroma. It's a hotter water, so I apologize. I got to get a bigger slurp in so that I can actually drink this stuff. So, very one-dimensional. It really leaves my palate really quickly. It's not astringent in any way. It's not bitter in any way, which is great. It does have nice creaminess to it, but it's very thin and really just kind of one-dimensional. It kind of tastes like you're just chomping down on a wet leaf, which it needs to be one dimension of Pu Erh tea, along with many other dimensions of good Pu Erh tea. Yeah, I'm almost getting this like old church pew kind of dusty, woodsy kind of thing from it, which again, on its own, not that great. If it were in addition to some other things like, toffee and citrus and good stuff like that, then I would be a little bit more happy with it. So second infusion, guys, we're gonna go for a minute here. So with a minute long second infusion, what I think we're gonna have happen, much darker color. If we brewed this for say 3 minutes, we would probably have an almost like opaque tea. You wouldn't really be able to see through it like I think we still will be able to with the 1 minute, but it should be noticeably darker, should be noticeably more robust on the palate, but even still with this being a low quality Pu Erh, I'm not expecting too much more out of it. I want to say I've probably had 3 or 4 cups of tea that I've made with this particular Pu Erh, and I've still yet to really kind of find a place where I'm impressed with it. So 4, 3, 2, 1. So definitely darker, more into that kind of copper red color. The old dog poop shoe has kind of worn off a little bit, and now it's mostly that kind of dusty church pew. You know, if you ever, like, as a kid, you'd go to church, an older church, you got the big hard wooden pews. They're a little bit old, a little bit creaky. You sit down, and then maybe you open the hymn book in front of you, and you open it up, and that thing's old, and dust flies out everywhere. That's kind of what I smell when I stick my nose in here. And almost kind of more of a toasty aroma now on the liquor. So you can see definitely a nice dark color. Maybe if I can try and get a white backdrop, but still really nice and dark. So you can imagine after say 3 minutes what the color of this would look like. Still quite one-dimensional, definitely a little fuller on the palate. The finish is a little bit longer, but even still, it goes away pretty quick. Really probably not going to finish the sample bag that I have of this just because it's not an enjoyable tea. But don't take that as Pu Erh is not enjoyable. Pu Erh can have an entire range of flavor and aromas across the spectrum, from floral aromas, citrus aromas, toffee aromas, wet, woodsy, earthy aromas, mushroomy aromas. So many great things can come from Pu Erh tea that it would be a shame to not experience it, and especially to experience it in the fashion that I did for the first time, in that very kind of ceremonial style. So, guys, that's tea. That's 3 kinds of tea. We definitely just scratched the surface. Like I said, this poor quality Pu Erh has led me into wanting to do another Pu Erh video that's that's with a good quality Pu Erh. So even though we're going to be getting out of January here pretty soon, and I'll be getting back into the wine and spirits and all that good stuff, you can expect another episode on Pu Erh tea from me. And we still have a coffee video coming up to kind of close out this dry January kind of vibe that we're going with. And then after that, be looking forward to the month of February, and in particular, the month of March, because month of March, I think I've decided I want to dedicate 100% to Texas wines. We've got a lot of good stuff happening down here, and I think I'm finally ready to dedicate a good chunk of the channel to it, because I've got some things that I'm really excited about for you guys. So that's it for today. Mitchell Sharrock with The Liquid Culture. Thanks for being here with me. We'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.